Now tonight, the country mourns. The East Africa community is mourning. The African Union mourns, and the world also is mourning. The family of the 14 pupils at Kakamega Primary School and the entire community share in their sorrow following last evening's stampede. And before the ink even dries, retired President Moi rested. Now, February has definitely begun on a sad note for the country and for most of us. So tonight, we are not only paying tribute to the former president, but also to the community of Kakamega that lost those 4 young persons and very promising people in this country. Later, we break the somber mood with our cartoon of the week, just before Who Said What, but before Time Bar. And on My Take tonight, we take a look at a brief profile of the lady and the gentleman joining us tonight and what links them to the late President Moi. First off, we begin with Amos Wako, former Attorney General. Now, Amos Wako was the 5th Attorney General of the Republic between the years 1991 and 2011. He was appointed by President Moi, succeeding Matthew Guy Muli in the post-independent Kenya. He is credited with major decisions taken by the retired and the late president, having been the chief government legal advisor. He took some heat for the human rights violation that occurred during Moi's reign, but credited with transitioning the country through 3 major events that we will never forget in the country's history. That includes the multi-party politics, 1992, change of guard between the retired and now the late president and President Kibaki, and of course the current constitution in 2010. Amos Wako is now Busia County Senator. Next, we move to Fred Gumo. He served as a member of parliament between 1994 and 2013 when he was replaced by Timothy Wanyonyi as Westlands Member of Parliament. He served in the Moi government as the Regional Development Minister. Before then, he served as the Mayor of the Kitale Municipal Council, and of course he was right here in Nairobi as the City Council Commission Chairperson. His illustrious political career spans 38 years, beginning in 1974 when he became Mayor at the tender age of 27. Next, we speak about Phoebe Asio. She became the first chairperson of Maendeleo ya Wanawake, popularly known as Mama Asio. Of course, we give her that respect because of her age. She was elected to parliament in 1980, before I was born, representing Karachuonyo constituency. She held the seat until 1983 when parliament was dissolved. She was re-elected to parliament in 1992 after the multi-party system and became the Member of Parliament, and he continued to serve until 1997. She has championed women issues most of her public life, and at one time she was Kenya's ambassador to the United Nations Development Fund for the Women. She was first woman elevated to the position of Luo Elder for her efforts in promoting education for girls, women's rights and gender equality. And finally, we talk about Musalia Mudavadi. He served the shortest term as President Moi's vice president in Moi's sunset years as the president of this country. He was also deputy prime minister from 2008 to 2012. Now, 2012, he resigned officially to join presidential race. He served in 4 key ministers under Moi. That's finance, supplies and marketing, information, transport and communication. And later they removed 1 docket and he served as Minister for Transport and Communication between the years 1989 to 2003. So tonight, we borrow our quote from the late President Moi. He once said this: "The spirit of Nyayo is leading us to peace, love and unity. They are not slogans or vague philosophies, but practical foundations of countrywide development. Where there is peace, then there is stability, and only in the arena of stability will you find investment and enterprise and, of course, progress." My name is Ken Mijungu across the social media. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, welcome to our program tonight. Join the conversation as always. The hashtag is Sidebar. Use it. We'll be sampling some of your views, and Sidebar begins right now. Right, I'm told we don't have it, our page setup for tonight, but ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show tonight. And I guess it's a good time to ask you how you all met the retired president. Let me begin with the lady. How did you meet the late president, and when was that?
I first met President Moi when he became Vice President of the Republic of Kenya. after both Odinga and Murumbi had resigned from that position, I was then a senior officer in the office of the vice president.
Okay.
And that's when I first met him.
But that's when you first met him?
That's right.
All right. The former AG, when did you first meet the late president?
I first met the late president when I was the head boy or school captain of Alliance High School in 1965. There was a famine in the country, and we had decided as students to contribute. And we went without the 10 o'clock tea and the 4 o'clock tea. And we raised sufficient amounts, which even surprised our headmaster. And because of that, our headmaster made an arrangement for us to make a presentation.
Okay.
Me to make a presentation to the vice president at that time, who was accompanied by the Minister for Culture and Social Services, Ken Mijungu,
okay.
At that time.
Okay. Quite rich boys, if you could contribute to alleviate the sufferings of people. All right, Fred, when did you first meet the retired president?
Well, I think I'm the only one who met him before all of them.
All of them, okay.
I met him as a young man, young child in fact, when he just came to Parliament around 1958, when he was a member of Parliament. And those days, members of Parliament, whenever they traveled to Nairobi, they used to stay with relatives. There were no hotels, no lodgings. So he used to stay with the former PC, Cherogon, in Starehe. The former PC, the late PC, was then the labor inspector. So on weekends, they used to come to where our shop was. My father used to distribute milk in his one in African estates. And he used to accompany these other people on Saturdays. They could drink beer from the verandas, there were no bars.
Okay.
But Moi, because he never used to drink beer, my father used to give me a pint of milk.
To take to him?
To take to him.
Okay.
So when others were taking beer, he was drinking milk.
Okay. All right.
So that's when I knew him. He was a very close friend of my father.
At least
and at that time
something.
I was maybe about 10, 11 years old.
Okay. And you could remember that?
I also supplied her with milk.
With milk?
Yes,
Oh, great.
In her house, and at that time she was...
told us this.
Yes.
And that's
I used to take milk to her house, and she used to make very nice tea for me.
Yes.
Whenever I delivered the milk, she told me, oh,
Ngoja
young
kidogo
man,
kunywe
ngoja
chai.
ukunywe chai kwanza. So she used to make very nice tea for me.
Okay.
So
it's a good reunion here.
Oh, yes.
At least he used to drink something, And Musale Mudavadi, when did you first meet the late president?
Fine, Ken, before I do that,
Yes.
you raised something in your intro.
Yes.
And I thought it's important that I speak to it.
Okay.
And most likely I'll be speaking also on behalf of my colleagues,
Okay.
that these events have happened so fast, the Kakamega tragedy and then the death of the president.
Yes.
And most of us were caught in a very awkward situation. People wanted our presence in Kakamega, yet this was happening here. So maybe let's just use this moment also to commiserate with the families of the young people who passed away in Kakamega. And there are 14 who have passed away, we believe, and many in hospital. We also hope that the investigation will be able to establish what really went wrong, and hopefully we don't have any more tragedies of that nature going into the future. But at this point in time, it suffices to say that we condole with those families. Equally, I think we should convey our condolences to the family of Moi.
Yes.
He was a father. Apart from his leadership role, he was a family man, and we must convey our deepest sympathies to his immediate family at this point in time. So, when did I meet him?
Yes.
I equally met him at a very young age. He was vice president then, and I was in Nairobi Primary School, and we were pupils with his children in Nairobi Primary School. And there was this occasion that one of the children was having a birthday party, and we were invited to Muzee's house in Cabranet Gardens. And that's the first time I met him when he was the vice president. And I remember as we were there, one of the things I remember on that particular day, as we were playing, he went and sat somewhere in a corner in a white shirt, and he started reading the newspaper while we were playing in his compound. And that was in the 60s, mid-60s, I would say.
At that time, okay.
I was also perhaps the same age as Gumo was when we first met him in 1958. I was, I think, maybe barely 10 years of age.
Very interesting. The reason why I wanted to know when you first met, because this panel, I wanted to constitute a panel that will really help us understand the person of Moi and the transition and that gap that he has left is very important. And I was going to give you an opportunity, each one of you, later on, at least to condole with the family and the community from Kakamega. So it wasn't an oversight. We were going to do it. But gentlemen, I also first met President Moi perhaps at the beginning of 90s when he went to Migori. That time I was in primary school. I can't remember the class, but I was pretty young. I remember Kaguthi then was the PC for Migori, and if I'm not wrong, Raburu was the DC of Migori. Later became the PC to replace Kaguthi in Migori district. My dad was in the circles of education, so I remember that very well, shaking the flag in Migori to welcome the president when I was at Kadika Primary School. I still remember, I remember him, and of course we have covered a lot of things about the late president. Now that we have spoken about how we first met him, a lot of things have been said about this president, but I want to know, you worked with him, you all worked with the president, and probably the most outstanding things, before I go specifically to the question, that if you look at the time he took, the 24 years as president, and even perhaps the ones he was a vice president, what is the most outstanding thing from the top of your mind that today you know he's gone to the ground, but this is what you will remember this president for? Let me begin with the lady again.
I think his humility.
His humility.
And the power to listen.
Okay.
I worked with him as an officer in the ministry. And Moi had the power to listen. And didn't just listen. He also contributed. And at the end of it all, he acted, which is very rare among the young leadership these days. They are always in a hurry.
They don't listen?
No, they don't. They are always in a hurry. And then another thing that was very special about Moi is that he traveled. If there's one man who knows this country, it was him. And he didn't fly like we now see Musalia fly from one end of Kenya to the other. He actually drove. And he was able to meet Kenyan people.
And the roads were not as good as they are right now.
And didn't just talk with the high and the mighty. Moi talked with the bare feet women as he traveled around this country.
Okay.
That is the one thing that really impressed me about him. And then eventually, recently, he aliomba msamaha kwa watu wa Kenya, msamaha. What African head of state would want to go that low? Kuomba watu wa Kenya wamsamehe kama aliwakosea. You know, these are values that we don't see very much of these days.
Okay.
And I think here he stands out in Africa as a man who really did what many leaders have not been able to do.
Okay. As the AG used oversaw three transitions, major things in this country, the history of this country. But you worked with Moi, and perhaps something that has been said about you, you are the only legal advisor to Moi who will have 2 lines of briefings for Moi. So you will want to tell him, if you do this, it will go this way. If you do this, it will go the other way. So you had always 2 lines, and perhaps clarify this. Did you ask that question beforehand? Mzee, unataka hii endelee namna gani? Then you write the opinion.
No. In fact, when I first met him, when he appointed me,
yes,
he appointed me out of the blue The country at that time was undergoing a very critical period.
Okay.
Demonstrations, clamor for multi-party democracy, and so on. So it was baptism by fire.
Okay.
You are appointed, and yet you cannot refuse. But you have to continue. And in the first meeting I had with him, we had a long talk on the situation in the country. We had a long talk on how we should relate to each other. And he advised me on many, many things and so on. But one thing that he told me quite clearly, that what I want from you as a legal advisor is the best legal opinion on any issue first. That he made very clear.
Okay.
And he also wanted me that I should not venture or engage or be taken advantage of by politicians. That I should, at any time I'm in that type of problem, go to him for directions when it came to matters political. So I decided that I would not engage in politics like some of my predecessors had done, but I'll focus on my professional work as a lawyer. And that's what I did. And I can tell you that all throughout, I would go to him with the best possible advice.
Not two of them.
Not two of them.
Okay.
That this is the way. And then we could discuss and so on. And in most cases, he actually accepted my opinion. I can tell people that he really is a man who respected law. Everything had to be quite legal. For example, we talk about the one-party, converting from one-party state to a multi-party state,
yes,
which he announced on 3rd of December at a Kano meeting in Kasarani. What people do not realize, that he had made up that mind long before it happened. He had confided in me about 2 or 3 weeks before the Kakamega agricultural show. And we had discussed it, and he had actually said that he does not want to spill blood because of all these fightings going on. So he's now inclined to
of course,
make Kenya multi-party.
You have to admit there was also a lot of pressure from the likes of Ford at that time.
There was a lot of pressure.
Yes.
Quite a lot. But at the same time, it was not so much of that pressure, I can tell you. It was more because of the nature of Moi. He did not want the spilling of blood or Kenyan suffering because of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he actually directed me at that time. This was about September, October, to start drafting the constitutional amendment to remove Kano, section 2A,
yes,
and other consequential amendments. At that time, but he told me to keep quiet.
Okay.
But as we moved on, I began doubting
if he was going to do it.
I mean, was he telling me the truth? Because he still stuck to his line.
Yes, that's script. Yes.
And all the Kanu, stalwarts and so on stuck to that line.
And yet on the other side, he was
told me to
this.
And I drafted it.
Yes.
Yeah. Then on the very day itself, he called me and said, we'll find your kit. And I did it. I said, I've done it. Then I just kept quiet. We went to Kasarani.
And he made the announcement. Okay.
And that's why it was possible. Soon after the announcement, we were able the following week to pass the constitutional amendment.
Okay.
Because everything had been done. That's the type of person
Moi was. Okay. Even as you say that, a lot of things come to my mind. I was younger then, probably I was just 9 years old, but my dad used to follow this a lot. This is the reason why. What you're saying is precisely the reason why a lot of the people who are in the generation that preceded us thought Moi had 2 faces and 5 lives. I'd like that explanation a little bit later. But Fred, listening to him, you a little bit, I don't know if it was a smile of acknowledgement or a smile of doubt.
Acknowledgement. People like Guma say at that time,
yes,
between when I'd been told and the announcement, they were also on me.
And you're just coming, by the way. You're just coming.
They were also on me. The
opposition at that time.
Kanu,
yes,
the one You are Attorney General. You should announce. I should make public an announcement.
Yes.
That there will be. We shall stick to one party.
Okay.
But I could not.
Oh, your operatives.
He's one of them.
He's one of them who wanted to stick to the. He was a beneficiary, you know, of one party.
Yes. Well, we of course, as he says, some of us were there to resist.
You have to hold on to it.
You know, sometimes you have to resist. In the government, you see with the president, you must have people who can be firm and resist. Because the other side was pushing for change.
The opposition then,
Yes.
Kenneth Matiba and the rest.
Yes. But
Martin
you must
Shikuku,
have also
yes.
hardliners on your side. And we were the hardliners. But apart from that, Moi, as I knew him, he was a nationalist. He liked this country and he liked the people of Kenya. He was never a tribalist. And if you look at his appointments, you hardly get a ministry where you have a minister, a Kikuyu, a permanent secretary, a Kikuyu, and maybe deputy. When he had a Kalenjin minister, he had a PS Kikuyu.
That's right.
When he had a Luo minister, he had maybe somebody from the coast as permanent secretary. He made sure that he mixed so that the whole ministry looks national. Secondly, there are many times when maybe we would be sitting and we notice something and you told him that, mzee, unajua, hakuna Turkana DC. And you say, what? You mean hakuna DC Turkana Kenya hii? And you would look for someone, a DO, and appoint the following day as a DC. So he tried to make sure that every community had was represented. I remember once some Pokots came to me and they asked me that they have been trying to see the president and they were not able to. So if I could make an appointment for them. And then I made an appointment for them to go to Kabarak. And we had some young university students and some young graduates who are working in the government. And then as we talked, one of them who later became PS, I forget who, this Pokot guy who was PS for water, and he was removed later. By then he was a young man, I just left the university, was working in one of the ministries. He whispered to me that, why don't you ask him to?
That's not Lotodo?
No.
Okay.
He's
okay, we can give the name.
And then he whispered to me that, why don't you ask him to transfer me to take me to Central Bank?
And he did?
And I asked the president, oh, Pokot. Hakuna Pokot huko Central Bank. And this young man had done economics. Supeleke huko. Do you know he said, okay, Jumatatu kuja unione, and they took him to Central Bank. He went up to director. Later on, he was appointed PS, I think, by Uhuru, recently, PS Water, Kuti or somebody. Forget his name. Okay. So he was that type of person. You would tell him, as long as you are not talking about your own tribe, your own person. If you are talking about somebody else, some other community, then we would take it very seriously. Although sometimes also we could help others from our own communities, which is also right. But that's one thing I liked him for. He tried to balance. He tried very hard
to balance. Okay.
To balance.
Okay.
Which doesn't happen often.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm told I have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd like to hear what he remembers Moi for. Then we can now discuss issues, because apart from the positive things that we have heard about President Moi, perhaps you'll enlighten me on some of those things that have been said about the late president, so that Kenyans can also know. But first, let's take a short break. We'll be back.
Heaviness and a burning inside, it could be heartburn.
Kiungulia na kuvimbiwa? Ino inatibu ndani ya sekunde 6 na inatuliza dalili 6 za kiungulia. Kwa hivyo unaweza kuburudika bila kikomo. Ino, tibu haraka kiungulia na tumbo kuvimba.
For exhilarating drama, just move to NTV.
The Lake Victoria is very important. It's a resource to the region.
77 ilikuwa samaki nyingi kabisa, kwa maana maji ilikuwa safi, na siku hizi hakuna samaki because of dirty water.
Hatukunywi maji, ni kama hii maji imebakia wanyama.
What we release back to the lake meets the regulatory standards.
Hii maji ilikuwa maji safi, na saa hii huwezi fanya nayo kazi kwa maana ni mafi kila wakati.
An e-slip number or a new establishment code should be used as a reference when making payments to allow for the processing of 2% levy remittance. Remember to file your 2% tourism levy on or before the 10th of each month.
And we are back with the best to give us the history of the late President Moi. And thank you guys who've been sending the name. Now, we have confirmed that the PS that former Cabinet Secretary Gumo is talking about is called James Lepiotum Teko. That's the name. Oh, yes. So yeah, that's the name. So let me hear from Musalia Mudavadi. What remarkable thing comes to your mind, apart from your appointment when you were young?
Yeah.
Because he considered a lot of young men. As we were speaking off camera, you told me there was a lot of young men who were incorporated in his cabinet. Correct. But what do you remember him for that is remarkable from the top of your head?
And I think one of the things that people may not know is that Moi had the memory of an elephant.
True. Very true.
You know, he would remember people in any part of the country. You go to a village and Moi would identify somebody by name. Even within a crowd, he would single out somebody and say, wewe Mr. Flani ama Mama Flani. And he would ask very personal questions about somebody, completely out of the blue. So that was something that was very interesting. And that did help him in the running of his government, because he was a stickler for detail. Moi would not let anything go through his fingers. He would read, for instance, if it is a cabinet memos, he would read the cabinet memos, and he would challenge you if it is originating from a ministry until you have convinced him that what you're presenting is logical and can be funded. Then he would say, now we are ready to approve that. So that was one thing about him. The other thing is that he was an early riser. President Moi would call you even as early as 5 in the morning. At least I would experience that. I know you did. Perhaps you did. That he would call you just out of the blues at 5 in the morning and say, Bwana Flani, I expect to see certain things done. By 7:38, can you be in my office? Now, you have to wake up, prepare, and be there that time so that you can respond to the queries, or he can give you the direction that he wanted to give you. So that was another quality about him. Waking up very early, being very precise with his timing. If he told you I'll be at your station, you know, he was always touring the country. So if he said I shall be in Chavakali market by midday,
he will be there.
At exactly midday,
he'll be there.
The president would be at Chavakali.
Okay.
So this is some kind of discipline that he had, which is very rare to come across, because most of the time, once somebody is in a big position, they tend to believe that they don't have to be disciplined on time.
They're the beginning.
But the leadership to him was that you must lead by example. So discipline in terms of keeping time, and then in terms of precision or something else. And also he was very humorous. Don't be cheated. As firm as he was, this head of state had a very good sense of humor.
Okay.
He would sometimes get people's ribs aching with laughter.
Okay.
But don't mistake it. Remember, he could also fire you on the radio.
Yeah, that was one of them.
At 1 o'clock.
Yes.
And you'd realize that you have to go home. So this was Moi.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has been said that if you look at the crop of leaders we've had the last 3 decades, perhaps Moi exemplified someone who had the interest of this country at heart. And one of the reasons that the people who worked closely with Moi thought that he was going to hold on is because of that real interest, that he did not foresee anyone who would take it to the next level. And if there were no change of the constitution, perhaps he would have not agreed to let it go until he was sure that there's someone who will take Kenya forward. Do you, ladies and gentlemen, agree on this?
I think for sure he had a deep love for Kenya and for the people. And beyond that, and that's why he played a very key role in East African community, in the African Union. Beyond that, he had a deep love for the black man, wherever he was. And he espoused views to support the cause of the black man, the cause of African unity, revived the East African community and Kenya. I think his love was genuine and it was very deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fred, how did Moi's intelligence work? How did it work?
Well, number one, Moi always met the head of intelligence almost maybe twice, 3 times a week. Every morning. I mean, twice, 3 times a week, before 7. And they would brief him. Maybe they would brief him, the inspector of police. I mean, by then it was commissioner of police, the director of intelligence, the head of the army, differently. Then on top of that, he also met the ordinary people, because there's not even one single time that Moi would have lunch alone. And he would let people talk. And when he's having this luncheon, he would be having luncheon with people from different parts of this country.
Not necessarily
some who did not go to school, some who went to school, some professors and doctors and everybody mixed up for lunch. And you would be free to talk as much as you want. Then out of that, you might think he's not taking it seriously, but he would pick a few things from these people. And in some cases, he would ask questions about certain areas. So in most cases, whenever he used to tell us that, you see, when you get this information from the intelligence, that information has already been imechungwa.
Okay. He already knew, yes.
But the one you get from the ordinary man.
That's the one he took. What is this thing that we
hear?
That
not that he took it.
Okay.
But he would also not dismiss it.
Okay.
You see? Because in some cases, you would go there in the morning maybe, and he tells you something that happened in Busia. in your village.
And
he would ask you, and you don't know. And he's already aware. You would never tell how he got that information. But he allowed people to talk freely. And you see, when you meet many people and you talk freely, you get a lot of information from every corner of this country.
Okay.
You see, so when you mix it with the usual one, the one that now the correct one,
yes,
and you do your own assessment, chances are that you will come up with very good information.
Okay.
And that's what he did.
And I think that's why, to be a member of the security, because I was part of the security also,
yes,
you had to be very, very on top of things. Because you could call you on the hotline, say you're the PC in Kakamega, and tell you what happened. And if you do not know, you in Kakamega, what happened, and he knows, you could be very, very embarrassed. So the provincial administration, the intelligence, they were all up to their mark. Because they knew any time Nyao can call. And they don't want to be embarrassed that they were not aware of what had happened.
Okay.
He would support the DC. He would support the DC without the PC's knowledge.
Yeah.
Or in some cases,
and it was not in subordination then?
No, in some cases, even the DO.
He's the boss.
He's the boss.
Yes, even the DO.
Yes.
You would go to State House and you find your DO there. You see?
Some elders from the village.
Some elders from the village.
From the village.
You know, one time I went to his office in the morning and I found him. He had a book, a black book, like this. And in this book, he had the names of elders from different sublocations. Names written by hand. And they used to have very good handwriting.
With their phone numbers.
With their phone numbers. But you see, those days phones were not there. Whenever you wanted somebody from that village, you'd call the DC, and the DC would summon the person and bring him here. So, in fact, if Moi was living at this time when we had these telephones, mobile phones, nobody would ever beat him on getting information.
Okay.
But I think the issue of accessibility for President Moi was high on his priorities. He was a very accessible individual, very accessible president. And maybe this is what we are seeing here is an attestation to that fact, that he could reach out to very many different people at different times. And then he mastered what the provincial administration then could do. I mean, he's somebody who really understood the instruments of state and how to use them to make sure that they're keeping you abreast of the events of the day. But let me just bring out one thing which you raised, and perhaps you have not addressed. You know, you raised the issue that people would have thought that he would not have relinquished power,
yes,
and he would have wanted to go on throughout. I think it's a school of thought that, in all fairness, I think needs to be debunked. Because, first of all, his upbringing was very humble. You know, this is something that we must really never forget. He's somebody who came from very humble beginnings, persevered as vice president for, is it 16 years? 11 years, and then became president. Now, after ushering in the multi-party era again in 1992, when Amos has said that they removed the Section 2A to move us from a one-party state, Moi said that he'll serve his 2 terms, and he did. And when time came for him to exit,
he did exit.
He did exit.
Yeah.
You know, in spite of the humiliation that was visited on him at Uhuru Park, with people mudslinging and throwing all sorts of things. He delivered the instruments of power and handed over to President Kibaki.
You have to agree, even him, he had that conversation with people.
So,
by the fact that he said that you think African leaders cannot live, it means it was a concern at the back of his mind.
Yes, but so he wanted to prove that the decent thing is that you could live. So on this one, it's a legacy that we should not take for granted.
Okay.
But he was also a nationalist. I remember in the early days of our independence, after Jeremy Oginga Odinga had resigned from the vice presidency, and then Murumbi came in. I was in the same ministry. And then in a very short time, Murumbi resigned where he was at the United Nations in New York. Moi came in, and we saw a nationalist. He wanted to know what we were doing that was different, our approach to the issues that affected the people under his ministry. He wanted to know whether we had something different from what the white men in that same ministry were doing. And he questioned you, and he listened to you, and if you had something different that was good for this country, he would make sure that it became a policy in that ministry. So in the early days of our independence, Moi displayed a real nationalistic leadership at that stage, and we were only about 4 or 5 years in independence, and he did it for those of us who are working under him.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're taking the last break to pay the bills. When we come back, I'd like to discuss the issue that Kenyans want to really know on social media now. They are asking me to ask you, is the notion that President Moi, the late President Moi, was a dictator? I'd like your opinion on this, because there's a lot of instances, and the human rights, for example, violation, which the AG here took a hit for because he was a chief legal advisor for the government. I'd just like to discuss that briefly, because Kenyans need to get that out of the way. Stay with us, we're back in a moment.
Rib-cracking comedy. Just move to NTV.
Looking to enjoy sumptuous meals and drinks at affordable rates? Welcome to Nasco's. Our diverse menu gives you a variety to choose from. Visit us at Veteran House 4th floor, Moi Avenue, or along Mombasa Road at the Nation Printing Press Center. We offer outside catering service and do home and office deliveries. For inquiries or to place an order, call 0700-613-902 or email info@nascos.co.ke. Nation Staff Consumer Society Limited. Enjoy our hospitality.
An e-slip number or a new establishment code should be used as a reference when making payments to allow for the processing of 2% levy remittance. Remember to file your 2% tourism levy on or before the 10th of each month.
Okay. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We continue the discussion tonight. We have respected members of the society with me in studio tonight, helping us just understand the late former president's life and how he led this country for all those years, 11 as vice president and 24 as president of the country. Let me discuss this contentious subject, and I'll begin with Fred Gumo, because this is something you've spoken about. He is said to have been a dictator, and it was either his way or no way. I don't know if you saw him that way or you saw him a little differently.
Well, I did see him as a dictator because, you know, when you are a head of state or when you are in a powerful position, many people will see you in different ways. One, Moi welcomed everybody, including people in opposition. But you know, sometimes when you are a head of a state and you see things going wrong and you don't correct them, then they might just get worse. You know, I don't understand what people mean by saying that one is a dictator, because you see, Moi never forced issues. Moi allowed people to discuss issues. Moi allowed, you see, people started calling me a dictator after the attempted coup in 1982. That's when they started calling him a dictator. And you know, the moment you are injured, you become very sensitive. You see, I remember very well when, you know, you find, when Kibaki came in, and we were in parliament, and some members of parliament, some people who were Kibaki supporters, were saying that Nyayo place, the Nyayo, remember that they used to call it the Nyayo chamber house. I mean the torture chamber. That it must be destroyed. And I asked some of them that suppose today we are sitting in parliament here and you hear that there are people maybe sitting somewhere in a certain house plotting to overturn this government. That time Kibaki was already in power.
Okay.
Would you sit and wait until they do it?
Okay.
Or you would arrest them immediately?
But that's just a positive one that you're giving to justify.
But you see, that's how things happen.
Yes.
You
But it sounds more as a justification to what happened rather than an explanation.
Yes,
for
but
why
you see
it
now, when Moi was president, you know, dictator does not even allow people to talk. Does not even allow people to say anything. But Moi allowed people to discuss things.
What if what they're saying is what coheres with his thoughts? He allows them to. Let me listen to for my age.
I think it's for me.
Yes.
I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. We have to make a difference between the period of the attempted coup and up to 1990, when maybe things like removing the security of tenure of judges, removing secret ballot, those type of issues were coming. But that was a reaction of a man who was about to be removed from power.
From power, yes.
That period should be.
We cannot blame him for that period.
The period 1991 onwards, when he accepted multi-partyism and were able to bring in multi-partyism and parties were able to be formed, I do not think that you can call Moi a dictator. I personally, when I was appointed as Attorney General and I was given a house in Muthaiga, I refused because at that time the perception outside was he's a dictator. And I had already made a name for myself at the international level and at the regional level in matters of human rights. So I thought I could not last. So I opted to stay in my house because I thought I could not last because Moi was a dictator. But the personal experience I now had thereafter was literally accepting whatever advice one gave him, he would follow it. And there are many examples I can give for that. Sorry. There are many examples I can give for that. For example, we had Ford, okay?
Yes.
And then because of the differences in leadership between Oginga and Matiba, it split.
Yes.
Now, the Hawks, if Moi had been a dictator, the Hawks were demanding, and there was a law for it, for the Attorney General to deregister Ford. And the law was there, and that law is still there today. That is the interest of peace, security, blah, blah, blah. Deregister.
Okay.
Alternatively, under Section 19, where one sees that there's a dispute in leadership, I had the power, if I wanted to, just to give notice, and at the expiry of that power,
yes,
deregister.
You would.
Now, if he had been a dictator,
yes, would that have happened?
He would have ordered me.
Yes.
He would have ordered me to deregister.
But he didn't.
He did not. Instead, we discussed the whole issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed the whole issue.
Okay.
And I said, there is a law not of deregistering because of public security, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But at least where it appears to the Attorney General or to the registrar that there's a dispute in the leadership. And at that time, there was indeed a dispute in the leadership.
Yes.
One did not know who the leader of Ford, as it then stood, was. So I said, we'd rather use that law. But instead of me giving a notice of 30 days for them to come together, and and the register, if they don't come together, I said the best thing is let us give them the opportunity, the opportunity to register, but with an acronym to show the difference.
Okay.
And that's how Ford Kenya and Ford Asili came.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, that is not an attitude of a dictator. That's an attitude of a Democrat who wants to see multi-party democracy work.
But perhaps you can also argue that he had no option at that point, and we were headed towards a multi-party, and this had to happen.
No, this issue about no option, let's forget it.
Okay. There are always options.
If a person is a dictator,
yes,
you don't talk about option. If you say
signs of time,
it's done. In spite of the consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Signs of time.
If he had refused to, if he had said, I'm not retiring this year, I'm going on, he would have gone on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
He
would have gone on. The problems would have been there, but he
would have shed blood, what he feared most at that time.
I know Chief Jonathan of Botswana. He refused to go after an election, after he lost an election, and he stayed in power for another 10, 11 years.
Okay.
You think Moi could not have done that if he wanted to at that time?
Okay.
So we are talking about somebody who, to me, who was not a dictator in the way you think it is.
He was,
we are talking about somebody who was basically interested in the good welfare of Kenyans and Kenya as a state.
Okay. Okay.
Well, this is a very interesting conversation, but it must always be taken in the right context.
Yes.
Because all these things happen within a certain context. And we have to look at what the Attorney General says when it came to dealing with the coup and the aftermath of the coup.
Yes.
There were certain measures that would have to be taken at that time. Equally, we must also remember that globally, during Moi's time, a few things were happening that had implications all over. This is when the Cold War was coming to an end. The Russian side of it was crumbling, and so there were certain dynamics globally that would definitely influence the politics of many nations, not just Kenya, but many nations. Now, we then will remember that during that time, because make no mistake, Moi never compromised on security. All right, let's also call a spade a spade.
His security or the country's security?
Country's security.
Okay.
And if he felt that there was a security threat to the country, in one way or the other, whether originating internally or externally, Moi would be very firm. All right. Now, if the firmness then is interpreted as dictatorial, then that becomes something else. But he never compromised on matters security. Equally, we have had challenges. You know, we had a crackdown on people during Moi's era. But equally, we saw, even after Moi's era, we saw in the Kibaki era, people would say there are extrajudicial killings and so forth. So that there are certain challenges that will emerge. Okay. And even now, those challenges still emerge.
Still exist.
Now, we are also seeing a new issue, the threat of terrorism in this
remember
country.
4 years before he left, there was a terror attack
yes.
in the country. Yes.
In fact, the worst terror attack
yes.
was during
his time
in
yes.
1998. So when you look at some of these things, they must be taken in context. Okay. By the way, we are not advocating that people should be locked up or killed or whatever. Mm-hmm. No, far from that.
Okay.
Then the other thing that I must say, from Moi's school of leadership, there were no two centers of power.
There's always one, himself.
There was always one center of power, the president. I served in his cabinet, and I knew, and I watched, and we listened, that Moi was very clear. He guarded his authority jealously.
Okay.
So that firmness, that idea that he must be the last port of call in the nation in matters of security and so forth, he never compromised on it. So I would say that that could be, that firmness is perhaps what is being mistaken for that. But surprisingly, I've seen some nostalgia when you hear people talking. They're beginning to say that a little bit of that firmness
was necessary.
Was necessary, and some are beginning to say it is even necessary right now. But I'll not push that agenda.
This is something I want to ask you before I speak to Mama here. If Moi was the president today, how would he have dealt with the Migingo issue and the Somalia border dispute issue? Just briefly, how do you think he would have dealt with it in the context of what you've told us? His firmness and never compromising on security, and I believe territorial integrity of the country. How do you think he would have dealt with it?
Moi, first and foremost, was always a diplomat. So an issue like Migingo, he would have deployed all his diplomatic skills. That's a fact. Okay. In the issue of Somalia, he tried.
Because he started way back.
Yeah, he tried both, because once Sidebar was removed, you know what crisis we faced in
1994
in northeastern, and
yes.
to the extent that Kenya became the home of the largest
largest
refugee camp.
Yes,
you know, in northeastern, the Dadaab. But prior to that, we had a history of the challenge that was there from the colonial days, the initial days. Even when Kenyatta won, senior was in government, Northeastern had challenges, and the issue that I know he would have put the foremost would have been a diplomatic agenda. But if need be, Moi would not have hesitated to deploy the defense forces.
No.
Yeah.
All right. It reminds me of a time that a neighboring country claimed part of the Kenya, and we had it because we were younger. I said, ukiguza tutatuma. Yes. So, Mama, talk to us about it, also about his...
For the case of Migingo, which you just raised,
yes.
I think Moi would have by now found a win-win situation.
A solution to it.
Yes, he would have found a solution to this. But let me take you back to some very personal issues. During the KANU, when Moi headed this country, KANU was the only party, Mama na Baba. I made the mistake of standing against the national chair of the yes, and many KANU hawks told Moi, tell that woman to stop this nonsense. We don't want women to interfere with the systems. Moi didn't talk. He never told me at any one time not to stand against Amayo, and that is what encouraged me to go ahead and stand against him, because Moi never talked. But every other KANU hawk told me on my face that, woman, you have to go home and cook for your husband. Some of them told me at a public rally. He didn't. He allowed me. He didn't say it loudly, but he even gave me a certificate of nomination to stand against this guy. He must have known that I was going to win. Because I'm sure he was getting very good information about what was going on in that area.
Yes.
But this was his man, head of not only a KANU national at that level, but also chair of the famous, what did they call this committee? That
disciplinary committee.
Yes, he still allowed me to stand against this guy and allowed me to win. which would have been very hard if he was a dictator. So even at the personal level, Moi still practiced his nationalistic beliefs.
Okay.
And then allowed for,
leverage
democratic values.
Now there's, you see, even under one-party system, Moi allowed people to stand within the same party. You could stand even 5 people in one constituency, and you would address the same meeting.
With all of you present?
Yes.
This is the time there was the famous Mlolongo, right?
No, leave alone Mlolongo.
Yes, because it was compromised.
Yes.
Yes.
You hold a one meeting, you are all Kanu. You hold one meeting, and you go to the ballot, 5 of you in Kanu.
Yes. Mlolongo system.
No. Election.
The ballot, election.
Secret
Okay,
ballot.
secret
You
ballot.
go to the main election.
Yes, the main election.
5 of you, you are all Kanu, and people elect one of you.
Okay.
Yes, and you
without
know,
him saying.
But even her, with Okika Mayo, they were standing on one constituency on a Kanu ticket.
Yes.
And she won.
Okay. Okay.
Another thing I would say, people who say that Moi is a dictator, after 82, quite a number of politicians ran away. Maybe to Sweden, some to Norway.
Self-exile.
Yes.
Not the fear of the unknown. It was self-exile.
Well, in fact, sometimes he used to ask them why they are running away.
Okay.
So I remember we went to Sweden, and we were about 3 MPs. So we jumped into a train, and when we got into a train, whom do we see? Ngumba. Remember Ngumba? The late Ngumba? Ngumba used to be the mayor, then he became MP.
Left the country.
Andrew Ngumba. And that's the time of Moi Kenya.
He fled.
Within a very short time, when I looked behind, the guys who were with me had already jumped out of the train. They had left me with Ngumba.
Yes.
They had left me with Ngumba.
Yes.
In the train. Now, I talked to Ngumba. Ngumba told me now, see, kijana nguwe kijana sasa, mimi nahangaika hapa. I don't have anything to eat. Sasa nimeogopa kurudi nyumbani, itafungwa. The others had left. Then we went. I told him, have you seen the ambassador? He said, no. The ambassador does not see me. You can see your colleagues have run away. So we got the stage. I came out. I told him, okay. So I went and saw the ambassador. It was Wanyoike, somebody Wanyoike was the ambassador in Sweden. I went and saw him. I told him that I had been with Ngumba in... don't talk about it now. You see? Then I told him, just give me this phone. Because he said, don't tell anybody that you are with Ngumba. By the time you get back, you'll be sacked. I was an assistant minister then. So I told him to give me the phone. So I called President Moi here. Ngumba, you go up because mzee niko Stockholm. Unafanya nini huko mzee? Unakumbuka nilipatia ruhusa kwenda. Oh, sasa habari ya huko nini. And he knew these countries worldwide. He started telling me stories about Stockholm. Halafu then I told him, mzee, hebu nikwambie nini imefanyika leo. Akasema nini imefanyika? Mzee, nimekutana na Ngumba amekonda na analia. And we were in the ambassador's office.
Yes.
So he laughed and laughed and laughed. Na amesema nini, mwambie arudi nyumbani. Sasa ameogopa. Sema mimi sina maneno na yeye. Ambia yeye hata wale wengine ambao wako huko waambie warudi. Mimi sina maneno. Then, and the ambassador was there.
Yeah.
So I told the ambassador, can you please facilitate?
Yeah.
He was still scared. I had to call Moi again. President Moi gave him to talk to the ambassador. And he talked to the ambassador and said, wale watu wako huko wote warudi.
Wakuje nyumbani.
And he told the ambassador to prepare tickets for them. There were about 3 of them. Okay. The following week they were here and they were never arrested.
Okay.
So
that's a better testimony.
A dictator cannot allow things like that.
To happen. Okay. And we cannot argue these were isolated cases where he had favor. They had his favor, right? They're genuine cases. All right, I'd like to understand something because I want to talk, apart from just that dictatorship, there is the issue of human rights violation. It's also something that has been spoken about. The Nyayo chambers were just brought down just the other day after Kibaki took over and the rest. So this is something that I want to talk about, but just a break from that. Tell me, there's a time the president disappeared for a long time. He was not seen in public. I just want to understand, where did he go to? He disappeared for a long time, and you were the AG also. The time he stayed for so long without appointing a vice president, I think after the late Saitoti, and then brought Saitoti back. What was happening? Was that also an advice given to him, or it was purely his?
No, on Saitoti, I don't think the president disappeared from Kenya.
No, there's a time he was not seen in public for quite a long time.
No, I remember at one time.
Yes, in the 90s.
Because the news used to be, say on a Sunday, the president today was in a church, I don't know, the money, whatever. That was the first item every Sunday.
Yes, with his picture.
But then on one Sunday, that news item was not there. And the whole country said, where is the president?
Where is the president?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't long.
It wasn't long. It wasn't about a week?
No.
It wasn't a week?
It was not even a week.
Okay. I was much younger. I just remember.
Maybe 3-4 days.
He wasn't seen in public and it caused anxiety.
But it was caused by that news item not being there.
Mtukufu Rais.
You mean he never went to church today? I mean, what is it? Is he sick? Is he what?
Is he sick?
Okay. So the time he took long to appoint a vice president, what happened?
I think it was just about a month, is it?
It was a long time.
No. It was quite some
More
time.
than 2 months?
No, it was his decision.
Just a month.
It was his decision. He was the constitution that was there. He was in control, as far as I'm concerned, and he saw no reason to make his decision about a vice president at that time. That was the constitution that was in existence at that time. All right. So for him to make a choice of who would be vice president, he took his time. That's the famous time when he reappointed the late Saitoti.
Yes.
At the roadside. But you know the interesting thing about Kenyans.
He also sacked all the cabinet.
Yeah, Kenyans are very interesting. You know I think what Ken.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, the whole cabinet. He was the only one.
I was the only one.
He read the country.
I think
perhaps he read that advice.
Yeah, I think what you wanted to talk about is that when you say he was not there, I remember there was a time the president had a cold and he was coughing and his voice was down. And I think at that time, like any normal human being, I think he took a break from the public limelight. And of course, there were all sorts of aspersions about his health and so forth. But my friend, those aspersions were how many years ago?
So many. 90s.
Yeah.
The 90s.
He is a man who has passed away at 95. You know,
and the Lingiro says
103. So if he had a cough
in the 90s,
yes. If people were
he was sick or he was at that time, probably
he could have been indisposed like any other.
He went to check his eyes.
Yeah.
So I just remember there was a lot of anxiety about
because he was always there.
Yeah.
So this was purely his discretion not to stay without vice president for that period. I don't remember. Perhaps in my head it was longer than 3-4 months.
No, it was longer.
It was longer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Longer than 6 months.
Yes.
No, it was much longer.
6 months. Almost 9 months.
9 months. 9 months without a vice
months.
president. Yes. And then yes. So this is a question that I want to put.
I remember that when now he was rotating the people as leader of government business.
Yeah.
You know, this is the time he had Ngala and me.
And you were three, you, Ngala, and somebody.
There was somebody, there were 3.
Well, I can't remember the other one. So we served as leader of government business for a while. Because the vice president was ordinarily or constitutionally the leader of government business. So there was that period. But his business was conducted and he finally...
without a doubt, that was the brainchild.
And I believe in the constitution that we have, the Kenyan people sought to try and address that scenario where you don't have a gap for too long before you have a vice president. Now that is in our current constitution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a question that has been put and it's a concern of many. And my colleague Jimmy Gathu, I bet you all know him, has asked me to ask you this question. So he says, how would you, all of you, and I'll begin with Mama Phoebe again on this, how would you label the late president, the way he handled dissent and dissenting views, especially when issues of the death of Dr. Robert Ouko came up, the jailing of Raila Odinga, Kenneth Matiba, how would you say he handled dissent and different opinions on this?
Those were the agony of our nation when such prominent people are suddenly assassinated from very high positions, and those positions remain the vacuum, and the country was right to question. And I think at that time, Kenyans really suffered. They wanted to know the truth and what would have happened. And I know much later in his life, Moi had a discussion with Mrs. Ouko, and I believe he told her the truth. I mean, only Moi can do that. So that as a Christian, he was able to, explain the situation and what actually happened. I don't believe any other president
would have done that.
Would have wanted to do that. And remember, right from the beginning, Moi was always very loyal to the president. He never wavered his loyalty.
President Kenyatta?
Yes, he was very loyal to President Kenyatta throughout his life until Kenyatta died, and then he took over. Ouko was a very close friend.
And very loyal also.
Yes, of Moi. And I think
even a week before they died, they were somewhere in the US?
They were together.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, the same thing they have gone to do right now. Raila Odinga
maybe
and
the Attorney
President
General
Kenyatta.
can talk more on this particular issue of
yes.
assassinations of Kenyan.
Yeah. Dr. Robert Ouko, Raila Odinga, these were people with different views from Raila Odinga, his arrest and detention by Moi, and obviously Kenneth Matiba also. How he handled people who...
Let me handle Kenneth Matiba and Raila.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying the period after 1991, you take that into account, they were released. And I can tell you that without breaking any secrecy and so on, I know how they were released. Matiba was released. We got reports and so on, and we acted on them, and Moi immediately ordered the release and treatment. Raila will tell you that he had gone to, he was released, okay? And then he went to Sweden, Norway. He went to Norway, and his passport expired, and he had no way of coming back. And somehow he didn't get it. I happened to be in London at that time, and then Baroness Choka, we had some discussions, and somehow Raila then came to London. Then I told Baroness Choka that there's nothing to stop Raila from flying back home.
Okay.
Of course, I telephoned home, and Sally Kosgei at that time was the High Commissioner in London. And I had gotten the go-ahead to instruct London to give him the papers to fly back home.
Okay.
And he flew back home.
Okay.
The Ouko, of course, one of those cases where it's always mysterious. Because as a government, it happened before I became Attorney General.
Yes, 1990.
Yeah, and
he came in 1991.
Troon was,
yes, John Troon
was appointed by the government. Because of the way it was, we thought that the Scotland Yard, CID, if he came here,
yes,
he will be able to unravel whatever it is. And he came here, and he carried out the investigations and so on. We even had, if I remember correctly, we even had a judicial commission of
inquiry,
which recommended further investigations along particular lines. That was when they reached the end, further investigations were ordered, and in fact, even Biwott, you remember? People don't remember this. Biwott was actually arrested. And Oyugi, who are very powerful people in Gambia at that time.
At that time, Interior Ministry, an equivalent of Interior Cabinet
now,
Secretary.
that could not have happened without the president then, Lenyatore Teacher Arap Moi, knowing, wishing that he really wanted to go to the bottom of the matter.
Okay.
Because the reports of Trun were tending to point to, there was much evidence, but they were tending to point there.
Okay.
So he said, okay, let them be arrested.
Ministry of Security.
Until they were arrested. We carried on the investigations. There was very much to link the deaths to these two, but there was enough evidence to link the deaths to Anguka and some other people. They were prosecuted. You may remember. They were prosecuted when they were about to complete justice.
He died.
Fidel Hussein, the judge. The judge died. We had to start all over again, and then they were acquitted.
Okay, very interesting. This is something that is still mysterious to a lot of Kenyans, especially the explanation even up to now. Yes,
I can say something.
Yes,
it was very mysterious. In fact, that time, I happened to be the president in Laikipia, and then we were in Rimruti. When he got this message for Uko disappearing, and he was shocked. I could see that he was shocked. Because he said, now, sasa nini, what has happened? You know, here is my loyal minister. What has really happened, you see? So we came back to the State House. And he called Oyugi and asked Oyugi, what is this? What's happened? Please go and find out. Because you see, I think he also had some liking for Uko.
He was a foreign affairs minister, right?
He was foreign affairs minister.
Foreign affairs, and Hezekiah Oyugi was
and
security.
You see, when...
And Ochuka, whose Luo was also...
Ochuka
at that time. Ochuka, yes, Ochuka, yeah. No, Anguka, sorry, Anguka. DC at that time, yes.
So when we came here, and we were having some tea, and Moi left, and we were sitting, everybody was wondering. Because first of all, nobody could understand how the government can clear Ouko. Number one, he was not a threat, even to the president himself. You know, the president clears someone when he's a threat, when he's causing problems. But him, he was a very calm person. So this was just us talking. What could have happened? Because people were surprised. But as you say, it was mysterious.
Yeah, and still remains a mystery.
And I think even for Moi, he didn't know. He was not sure of what had happened.
Okay. All right. You have something to say on this?
Well, all I can say is that it was a dark part of our country's history. Not only the Uko saga, but there were other cases, even when you recollect and go back to the JM era, the issues you would hear about Tomboya, Agnes Kothek, Pinto. You know, they smack of some element of what you would call the dark cloud in Kenya's political history, where perhaps it's perceived that the element of tolerance had diminished seriously. So to me, we may never get to know
what really happened.
What really happened,
which is really unfair to Kenyans. You must
it's
agree.
really unfair. It has been. Yes. It has featured around the TJRC reports and so forth. I was just a new minister in the government, for instance, and I remember the president asking that who would dare imagine that he would want to harm one of his most loyal ministers, loyal and efficient ministers. So he was a man who was really distressed by what happened then. What had happened then. So it's right now we can only speculate.
Okay.
And to me, I think what I can acknowledge is that it was a dark cloud in our country.
Okay.
And if as a nation we have to move forward, maybe sometime the details of the truth will unfold. But on the other hand, it just shows that going forward, we must learn to tolerate
each other. Okay.
The Raila challenge was a challenge that was coming more because democratic space had been constricted.
At that time.
The urge for multi-partyism was there. And the truth is, as he said, once Section 2A was removed, a lot of these things
would have not happened. Gentlemen, the two of you, I have a question that I am really seeking your indulgence and answer. We began by speaking how the president, the late president, knew how to go about his day, woke up early, knew his intelligence and all. Don't you think that if President Moi, before he died, or before he left in 2002, was really committed as a president with everything at his disposal plus intelligence, he would have resolved this? Because he's gone to the grave, Oko went to the grave, Ezekiel Oyugi went to the grave, the judge who was investigating, who was presiding over this went to the grave. If he was really committed and with all these resources, he would have told Kenyans before he left power how that happened.
It's easier said than done. At this point, I would say it's easier said than done. You know, the mysteries, the issues, the things that have happened, not only in Kenya, but even in other countries, where it can become very difficult to get to the bottom of it. Because what would have been the interests that would have led to that? Moi was already president. He had no threat, as he says. He was at the helm. And
he had not announced even he was going to run for opposition. He had not even announced anything. It was 2 years before the election.
One would...
It was never controversial.
So one would be looking at, were there other interests that could have generated this?
But when it repeatedly happens to one particular ethnic group, then it is something that it raises many questions.
Because we're looking at Thomas Mboya, right? He was also, the same things will be said about him. Loyal to Kenyatta, senior, right? A good minister, eloquent at all, but he was assassinated still. So I don't want to dwell on this, but at least we agree on the table here.
If there's any hope you can have.
Yes.
Do you sometimes watch crime investigations?
Yes.
Now, if you ever watch that one, there have been some major crimes that have been committed, and they lie dormant for even 30 years.
Yes.
But something just happens
that,
and the man who was responsible is found. So we can lie in that hope.
Yes, that one day it will be resolved.
It will be resolved.
Musele says, let's hope that this dark cloud is gone and will not come back to this country, because you've lost some of the best brains. I believe most of them were stopped, were killed because they were being stopped from maybe becoming, presidents of this country and so on, or were part
of later post the incumbency.
So let's hope and pray that this practice,
caused by rivalry. You never know.
Must be stamped out completely. It must not happen. Because you see the way those children whose fathers were killed have suffered. Mboya's children, Uko's children. It is not right. It is not right that they should suffer this way.
Okay. Eji, indulge me. You spoke about Raila Odinga and how you spoke to Choka, she came to London and all. Some interesting thing is happening in this country about Miguna. If you were still sitting as an advisor of Uhuru Kenyatta, who has said that Miguna is free to come back. But I bet if Uhuru Kenyatta was to tell immigration that this guy needs to be in the country tomorrow, he would be in the country tomorrow. How different do you think Moi would have handled that, looking at those experiences that he spoke about and he spoke about also?
Miguna would have been in Kenya today.
Yeah, he would have given me tickets.
Would have come back to Kenya.
Okay.
I'll quote you an example. What was his name? He was a journalist Asian journalist working for the UN.
Oh, the one who, yes.
He used to be here.
Yes.
Kenyan. And he had a magazine.
Salim Loan.
Salim Loan.
Yes.
Salim Loan, his citizenship was striped. And then he flew. And then he got a job in the United Nations. And at one time, when I just been appointed, I went there and there were a big demonstration. Other United Nations employees saying, Salim Loan, Salim Loan, Salim Loan. The stripping of citizenship from Salim Loan was in itself illegal because Salim Loan was naturally born. So you cannot strip it out. I came back. That's why I say Moi was not a dictator. I came back and advised the president, this Salim Loan
needs to be here.
What happened to him, stripping his citizenship, was wrong. His passport should be restored and he should be allowed to come back. And it was done, and he came back. And he became the advisor to
Raila Odinga.
Okay. More or less a similar situation.
Yeah. Okay.
But does Mijungu want to come?
I think he said as much.
Does he want to come back?
I think he said as much. I think he said as much.
Because you see,
yes,
you can't travel to another country. You want to come. And you are abusing the leaders of that country.
But that's what we're talking about, intolerance. I mean, you should allow yourself scrutiny.
You see, why don't you just say you want to come? You come. But you are away. And you are abusing people.
Would you say it was right if he abused them if he's here?
Let him come and abuse here.
So he keeps quiet until he lands here? Huh? Because abuse is abuse. But
I'm just saying, because you see,
yes,
you know, it is human.
Okay.
You know, sometimes there is one thing that people forget. You know, there are certain things that they can touch you as a person. The moment you start personalizing, abusing people personally, you create hatred. So
you want to be president, and probably you'll be the next president of Kenya.
Frankly speaking, yes, we are doing ourselves a lot of disservice as a nation by not allowing Mijungu to come here, or by prolonging the process of him coming here. I think whatever it is, somebody must just get rid of their pride somewhere and enforce the law.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't agree with you more, but he's raised a question that I think we should start debating on. This habit, the culture of abusing leadership. It doesn't happen. It's not African. What has gone wrong? Why would anybody get up and start abusing?
Head of state.
Even the head of state.
Head of state.
Because in African culture, once you've been elected to a position, even at the age of 20, you become an elder. And then people don't abuse you. So where is this coming from, this culture of
well, we remember he was also a political detainee, and he was exiled by the late president now, right? At some point when he was at Nairobi University. So perhaps it's a good thing if you give afforded that opportunity to come back.
Things that we are all human.
You see, Koigi Omwere suffered the same fate. Koigi Omwere is here.
Yes.
He's here.
He's here.
He's
yes.
here.
Even Mijungu was here after that.
Yeah,
yes.
so when you look at it from that perspective, that's the one that we say that let us not allow dark clouds to start forming again.
Okay.
On the Kenyan landscape.
No.
And perhaps the passing of President Moi should be a moment of reconciliation.
Yes.
For the Kenyan people. That what legacy would he have liked? He liked to talk about love, peace, and unity.
Okay.
And if indeed we want to honor him, perhaps this is a moment of reconciliation.
Okay.
Well said.
Yes.
The AG said here very clearly that when Raila wanted to come, he asked the High Commission in London to prepare documents for him to come. Mijungu has been told
to go to the nearest embassy.
To go to the nearest embassy and apply for documents. he has refused to do it. Why doesn't he go there?
In fact, he has been assured
that he'll be given.
And he'll be given.
Why doesn't he go there? Let the High Commissioner refuse. Then he will say you have been, yes, I have been refused to get documents.
Well, I think if we dig deeper, we'll get lost in this debate. It was just an example to see if it was possible. It's raised a lot of issues also about that. Why you took my passport when it was not expired, right? Why don't you process it and give it back? The court has given 37 orders. Why don't you just follow the court order issue? There's a lot of
come back and press his claims and damages in the court of law.
Oh yeah, that's also possible. Now, as we end, I want to ask this pertinent question to the AG. Do you think the old constitution afforded an opportunity for the retired president to rule the way he did, because we know he was the last imperial president or the all-powerful president that was never challenged, and he had the center of power was firmly in one hand? Do you think the old constitution perhaps facilitated that, and the new constitution perhaps now made it a little bit easy to speak more and dissenting voices to be more?
The old constitution?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we have been saying in our reforms that we want to do away with the imperial presidency. And we have tried to term that imperial presidency under the new constitution. But I don't think we have completely succeeded. And I'm coming to the view that at the end of the day, it depends on the individual who gets that position.
Okay.
At the end of the day.
Okay.
And therefore, we have to look at the person to this, because under the old constitution, a person could have exercised even those powers properly, and there would have been no imperial presidency.
Okay. Let's come to the new age. Uhuru Kenyatta is a political son of President Moi, and he wanted him even to succeed him at that time. I want to talk about the level of political intolerance that we are experiencing in this country. Learning from President Moi and what you've told me, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, is there something that can be done differently? Because it's no doubt that the deputy president of the country has been isolated. Even today, first, I don't know if you noticed this, that the CDF was working with Matiang'i. The deputy president was working alone with his staff. Matiang'i called the meeting where he discussed government matters and the way forward, and he made that announcement. The deputy president was here. We even understand that the deputy president went into Lee and he was not allowed to view the body. This level of intolerance, and when Moi was alive, he made several attempts. And I'm reminded that William Ruto was in YK92, and it was also formidable in ensuring that Moi won the presidency back then together with Jironga and the rest. This level of intolerance in this country, has it attracted your attention? Let's begin with Mama. Has it attracted your attention?
I don't know. It's becoming a culture now. And I believe it's something that we must all work very hard to discourage. Because, you see, it is not right, and it's the Kenyan people who are traumatized. You wake up in the morning and you're fed with all this hate speech from all corners of this country. And then your children are asking you questions, so, or your grandchildren, so what's going to happen after this? Everybody's worried in their families now. I think our leaders must help this country to bring this thing to an end so that we are not traumatized anymore.
Okay.
It's trauma for Kenya. It has to stop.
And the younger generation. And all of you served in Moi's government. You saw how these things happen.
Is it intolerance, okay? Or is it that our political culture is toxic?
Okay.
In which case, you're blaming everybody here for causing the political culture of this country to be toxic.
Okay. So you've thrown it back to everyone. It's not a single individual.
Yeah, because, you know, when you say somebody's intolerant to somebody, and then you can also say that somebody is intolerant
to this other
the
person.
other one, and so on.
Okay.
The toxicity that it generates, it's a lot.
Okay.
And therefore it's up to the people of this country now to say, let us create a better environment for a proper political culture in this country.
Do you have a solution for that in the laws before I speak to the two gentlemen? Do you think there's a way this can be entrenched in the law so that everyone respects it, or it's about the person, as you said, who occupies that office again?
See, at the end of the day, law cannot enforce morality. is what we call national ethos.
Yes.
Where the BBI, in its report, the first chapter is on national ethos. And it is there deliberately because this national ethos pervades all other issues that we're thinking about.
Okay.
It pervades the intolerance.
Okay.
If you go to the non-implementation of the Constitution, the letter and spirit of the Constitution is not being
followed.
Is not being tolerated. If you go to ethnicity and so on, it's because of lack of national ethos.
Okay.
And this is what all of us must now struggle to try to create, a national ethos.
Okay. And you believe our solution could be in that? You believe that?
Yeah, we should go beyond constitution and legality and create that culture.
Culture.
Can it? Chapter 6.
Chapter 6, which is already exists.
Yeah, which is chapter 6.
Yeah. It's already
and that's why the BBI has recommended, that chapter 6 should be the implementation of chapter 6, and particularly the legal instruments that are implementing chapter 6 should be in place, effective ones.
Okay. Okay.
We have also recommended that we should have an ethics commission.
That sounds to me like just creating new laws because you will need enabling legislation.
Ethics commission becomes very important because of the things that you're now saying.
Okay, but under what framework? Will we have to have an act of parliament that establishes this commission? Which means we are still getting more laws like...
We don't want to create another commission, but this national cohesion and integration commission should now be given...
Strengthened, given more money?
Strengthened and given now more responsibility on issues of ethics.
Okay. But
issues of chapter 6.
Even the little that we have given them, we don't see what they've done with it. So we can't add them. But this is very key to you gentlemen, even as you speak about them. You became a president of this country, and you still have those ambitions. So just address it. This intolerance, do you see it? Do you think it's there?
There are some issues that we need to deal with. Intolerance must be dealt with across the board. But in the context that we are talking about, you see, I went to the Lee Funeral Home. I also got there and I was told that the body has now, the body of the late president has now been moved for embalming.
Okay.
And I took it in my stride.
Okay.
And then I later went to visit the family at the president's residence at Cabranet Gardens. So we must also try and figure out who is isolating who.
This is the thing.
Okay.
We must move away from this thing about talking in parables. If indeed somebody is being isolated, is there a complainant who is saying I'm being isolated, and state it to the Kenyans that have been isolated and why? But in terms of what happened, and here I would really plead to the Kenyan people, let us give the president his due respect, the retired president. I mean, the one who has passed away, President Moi. We should not try and introduce a political agenda in what should be a unifying moment for the Kenyan people. I think that is one thing that we need to handle. And then the issue that I want to say is that when we talk about intolerance, that becomes a completely different issue. For instance, I have been one of the people saying that let us allow divergent views. We all support, for instance, the BBI initiative. Let people give their divergent views. And I'm happy the steering committee has announced a program, though suspended for a while until after the state of mourning is gone.
Yes.
But let people have different views, because as I always said, we are here, but Guma will have a better idea than I have.
Yeah.
And Wako will have another better idea than his. And Mama here will have another better idea. So if we can take this in context, so that the process we want around the BBI is not one that should be acrimonious.
Okay.
Because if we start now, What about when the actual questions
are out? We need to debate them
on the referendum.
Yes.
And right now we're just debating in the process. What will happen when we actually get to the actual questions?
Let me flip this, then I speak to Fred.
Yeah.
If the president flew back from the US today and landed here at midday and walks to the Leafin Road home, do you think he'd be told the same thing? Honestly,
he's the president.
Deputy president. He's the deputy president.
Come on.
Just be honest with it. Do you think the process has begun?
I can tell you for once that you are pushing this argument to a non-logical position. I have seen, I witnessed even the president himself, the retired President Moi, when he's told that somebody is indisposed, you cannot see the person. That the President Moi would walk off and say, Sawa, I'll come back on another day.
I think we have concluded it.
So I think we want to push
it was just an example,
because
he passed on early in the morning. I'm just thinking, he walked in after the press conference. So I'm thinking, if it was the flip side, it would really have happened. But you're telling me I'm pushing the argument.
By the way, even when the president, the president who has passed away, was at his kabarak, we sought to have appointments, and even his son, Senator, told me that no, this week it's not prudent. We postpone it.
And he will
come. And I never made heavy weather about it.
Okay.
But also,
you
know, there is one thing that you might not know. At Leaf funeral, you only view the body by appointment. Because you see, the moment the body has been, when they tell you viewing will be at a certain time, they remove the body from, I don't know, from those fridges or something like that. They prepare the body and
they allow you
for public viewing.
For public viewing. When they finish, they take it back.
Okay.
So anybody who comes after it, the body is already taken back, cannot see the body.
All right. I think, gentlemen, we have exhausted that argument. And for you too, Musalia Mudavadi and the AG. There's a lot of wins for the president, the retired president, the late president, but there are also the misses. So the two of you were accused in the Anglo-leasing, which almost brought the economy of this country down. What were your comments on that? Because that was a low point for the president, President Moi then.
I don't think so.
No. We are not. In fact, in agro-leasing cases, I can tell you there are about 3, 4, 5 cases I instituted against the then permanent secretaries in finance and of home affairs and of many.
Okay.
And they've been ongoing in the court. You haven't been following them?
No, I've been following them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
How many years?
They are in court.
Yeah. The home affairs one was in prison, isn't it?
How many years?
The home affairs were in fact Maliko, is it? Yeah, he was found guilty.
Golden Bag, and the Golden Bag scandal.
No, that is the whole.
My friend, you haven't read my book.
Yeah.
I've always told people, read The Storms of Passion. There was a judicial commission of inquiry.
Like every other judicial commission of inquiries in this country, where the report is in the shelf.
No, it was there, it was made, it was a judicial process. All right? And once a judicial process is done, it makes its recommendations. In my case, please read the Judicial Commission of the Inquiry.
Okay.
It is very clear that I was acknowledged by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry as the person who went out of the way to fight and finish Golden Bag.
Yes.
Yeah. So
which is true.
So this rumor.
Yes.
And I can confirm that report, apart from acquitting Masitwa, recommended a number of further investigations against certain individuals.
I mean, AG, you've spoken about further investigations. That's what happens in this country.
It recommended.
Yes.
Yeah.
Further investigations.
And we directed those investigations to be carried out.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some of them have passed on. I don't want to mention their names.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've taken a lot of your time. I just want to, we'll not even play our other segments of the day. I just want to give you an opportunity for your closing remarks, right? So that I let you go. Where do I begin? Ladies first, but protocol dictates here. Ladies first, closing remarks. And also remember the families in Kakamega, right? And also the family of President Moi.
I think we'll start with the families in Kakamega. I think that is one of the saddest things that have happened to this country. When a mother loses 4 children, let her go.
Yes.
I mean, it's unimaginable. I believe that safety measures could have been put in place to avoid this thing happening. I do not know how it all happened. It's a very, very pathetic and sad situation. The whole of Kenya is mourning with the people of Kakamega. And we just pray that those parents who've lost their children will find peace.
Okay.
It's a very disturbing issue. Number two, I think Kenyans want to mourn with President Moi's family. They've been hit very hard. And I think we need to pray with and for them and mourn with them until we send Moi to rest. And really observe this period of mourning as Kenyans seriously.
Okay. All right. I don't know the protocol between you gentlemen who will go first.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We are friends.
Okay.
I think I had opened up by conveying my condolences to the family of the president and also to the family of the young people who lost their lives in Kakamega. In the issue of Kakamega, I think what is critical is that as they investigate the issue of safety measures in the constructed buildings is absolutely essential. We should not just let it pass. We should ask our planners and the people who approved some of these building plans, did you take into account the necessary safety measures so that our young people are not in any danger? So that is a very serious issue, and we can only say that let the investigators finish their job and then give very clear recommendations about their findings. Now the other thing that as we mourn the president is to really just say, let it be a moment of meditation for the Kenyan people, and let us even tone down our politics for a while. If I remember well, during the 2013 election build-up, when was it that Saitoti passed away? It was 2013. In the clash with Ojode. I remember the country was in the moment of campaign. And I remember all politicians stepped back and they said, let us suspend our political activities and allow for this period of mourning and meditation to commiserate with the family. So I see no reason why we as politicians should not take a step backwards and slow down on our political activities at this particular moment in time. Finally, I was looking at the clip when I was seated on the other side.
Yes.
Your run on the president.
Yes.
And when he was the Minister for Education in the 60s and so forth. You know, one thing, he left a lot of footprints: education, health, conservation, the desire to make sure that constitution is followed in spite of all temptations and all things, but he stood his ground. Do you know, people forget that it's that retired president who moved a motion in Parliament, I think in 1957, the Legico, to set up the umbrella body of the Kenya National Union of Teachers.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know that.
So this is the man who set the foundation for the National Union of Teachers in this republic. Right. And then in the same 60s, the National Union of Teachers then went on strike with Keoni and others because now they were fighting for a single employer called the TSC, the Teachers Service Commission. So here is a legacy that we are taking for granted. But it is the president
who did all that,
who has been laid to rest, who has died,
yes,
that actually fought for unionism and to create the umbrella body for the teachers of this country.
Well said, well said. Right.
Well, I also join my friends in mourning the families of the children who died in Kakamega. This is something that we cannot all understand how it happened. Because for 14 children to die in that manner is something that is very, very painful. Very painful. So I would say that we all join them in sending our condolences, and they also promise that we are together with them.
Okay.
As you said, that one family lost four
children. Yes.
That's a very big number. So this is a very bad accident that we should not allow that to happen again. But for the president, the only thing I can say is that I also send my condolences, I and my family, the family of President Moi. But what I would beg the rest of the Kenyans is never to bring in politics into the president's funeral, our president's funeral.
Okay.
Because the way I've seen when people begin saying that, I don't know, the deputy president went to Lee and he was not allowed, when we know it's not true, I don't think it's fair. So we should not try to politicize, because this evening, the deputy president flew all the way from Kakamega to Kabarnet Garden.
It's true.
And he went to the president's home. He met the president's family. I saw it on TV, and he was welcomed very well. He talked, and even the family thanked him for visiting. So I don't think we should try to politicize that.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. Finally.
I too would want to really send my condolences to the 14 children who have died. I would wish those who are injured quick recovery. It was really the parents, I heard them crying uncontrollably. But I hope that the Almighty God will give them the necessary comfort. Kakamega Primary School is one of the best primary schools in that area. And therefore it's a school where most parents would want their children to go. And in fact, one parent was saying that I had wanted my child to go somewhere else. He refused. Another place he refused. He just wanted Kakamega. And now that child is dead. In addition to what they say, Musalia and Fred have said, I think the Ministry of Education should really look at the plans for schools from the safety point of view, particularly primary schools, and particularly those double story. I think it's only 3 stories.
Three story, yes.
Yeah, because this.
Actually, 3 floors, not 3 stories, 3 floors.
3 floors.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a time when I've seen a building has not collapsed. It is still intact.
Yes.
But people have died. So there must be something in the planning which is quite wrong. We had commissions of inquiry into those schools where people had died in dormitories. And it was because there was only one way out, and there was no key to open, and so many things. People died. And I hope the minister has now addressed that particular problem.
Okay.
Coming to
the late
Daniel Torre, teacher at Moi, I feel a really personal loss and grief. He made me what I am. But more important, I would not have served for this long time with him without him being protective of me. And let me tell you, I'm not so much concerned about the noise outside. Those I know how to deal with them. But it's the noise inside. And we are fighting almost throughout because of the people inside saying, this age, I should leave. It's that noise which the president protected me from.
Okay.
So I value that he placed a lot of confidence in me and that he retained me up to the very end to serve him. And I want, on my own behalf, people of Busia, my family, to convey my sincere condolences to the family of the teacher of Moi, who was a deeply committed Christian, and I'm quite sure he's now with the Almighty God, and that he will be looking after the welfare of those he has left behind from on high.
All right. Thank you very much, Mama. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. It was indeed a pleasure to have you all on the show. Because we look up to you for a lot of things that you've done for this country. And sometimes I'm reminded when I hear the story of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi and how people have eulogized him. I look at the leaders and think to myself, tomorrow, because we'll all go, what will they say about Amos Wako or Musalia Mudavadi or Fred or even Mama? So it's very important to me. Unfortunately, we are not able to run our segments because this conversation was that interesting and important for us. So we let them go without looking at our cartoon of the week or looking at our time bar. But thank you for watching Sidebar tonight. I'll be back on Thursday night on NTV tonight, and of course our news runs from tomorrow. We're live all over the country and we try to report more from Kakamega, and of course we're following what's happening in this developing story of the late president. Of course there are a lot of condolences coming in. Thank you for watching. On behalf of my team, have a good night. See you next week on Thursday.